Hey, what up? This is Zach Guilford from Midnight Mass, and you're listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Pop Culture Pastor.
Pop Culture Pastor.
Dave, I have a question for you.
Okay.
It's a question as old as time itself.
Oh, do I need to sing the song?
No, not
All right.
necessarily.
All right.
How do you try to stay hip?
I don't have to try.
Okay, how do you stay hip?
I'm just kidding. I'm not hip at all. I'd say to try and stay hip. Well, I do a podcast. You may have heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then I try to stay abreast on all the news.
Okay.
Is that how you stay hip? No. I wear cargo shorts.
Interesting.
Are those aren't still hip, are they? I'm afraid. Everybody's wearing the short shorts now, and I'm grossed out.
I mean, for a while, I think if you're wearing khaki pants, you would have been hip with Jake from State Farm, but I don't know about cargo shorts anymore.
No, I don't. I think I just don't really try to be hip. Once you have kids too, like, and they're getting older, you realize you just can't be hip. Why? Don't try, because it just makes it worse. So I am just unhip, not tragically unhip. I'm just unhip.
Well, Huey Lewis once said it's hip to be square, but I don't go to Huey for my hipster
Oh, that's too bad.
ideals.
He's got a lot of wisdom.
He does.
Lewis, and the news.
Well, I have someone with just as much wisdom and a lot more street cred.
Okay.
His name, William. And he said, reading murder books is how you try to stay hip. Yeah, I'm talking about 80s legend Billy Idol.
Well, Billy sure is. He's hip. I don't know what murder books.
Yep.
I'm really not into the true crime stuff.
So this will never be a true crime podcast, is what I'm hearing. But
yeah. No, I have no interest.
now I know that Dave will never be hip.
Oh. Well, look.
That's what my friend Billy said.
Hey, Billy Idol's a smart dude. And listen, if you like listening to true crime stuff, there's, a jillion podcasts out there that you can choose from.
There are.
And so, yeah, no disrespect to anyone who loves that sort of thing. I'm just like, yeah, okay. Yeah, people suck. People are broken. I don't need reminders of it.
I evidently need to start reading murder books because I have not. But
Yeah, why? I mean, but why do you feel like you have to start?
because
Just because it's hip?
it is hip
Okay.
in the song Eyes Without a Face, Billy Idol's best song. So
What? You come on here, you make these wild claims, pull out something from Billy Idol's library that I've never even heard of.
oh, everyone's heard Eyes Without a Face.
No, everyone's heard of White Wedding.
I mean, it's good.
It's good.
It's good.
What? It's like one of the greatest songs of all time.
That's a
Look,
stretch.
sometimes you don't. So this is hipster. You pull out some B-side from Billy Idol's library and be like, "This is his best song of all time." That's hipster. Sometimes just pointing out the obvious is the right answer. Like White Wedding is clearly Billy Idol's best song.
Is it?
Oh yeah. As a child of the '80s, I think I can comfortably.
Some people would say with a rebel yell.
Look, Rebel Yell's real good too. I have no problem with if you say Rebel Yell's Billy Idol's best. I don't have a problem with that either.
I have Rebel Yell above White Wedding, and then I have this song above that song.
Yeah, I have White Wedding above Rebel Yell because I have it memorized still. When it comes on, I can still sing every word. So just by virtue of that alone, I think that's the one.
So you might be wondering why we went down this random rabbit hole this morning.
There's a reason for it.
Today. Yeah, we're in the 80s today.
We are. This is Pop Culture Pastor. My name is Dave. Cody's here.
I am.
And later on, we've got a Be Kind Rewind coming at you.
That's as old as I am.
Yeah. 1989. The Burbs, starring Tom Hanks.
In other 1989 related news, Taylor's version's coming out soon.
What is it? What does that have to do with 1989?
She has an album called 1989.
Was she even alive in 1989?
Yes. Both Taylor and I are 89ers, as the Utes say.
Good for you guys.
Basically the same person.
I noticed she hasn't invited you to any of her shows, though.
Well, I might have politely declined.
Oh, okay.
That news wouldn't make it out because I'm polite.
I would say shocking Taylor Swift slander, but there's no such thing as that on our show. All right. Yeah, this is Pop Culture Pastor. We've got a lot to get to, so we'll move right along. Listen, people have opinions, and that's okay. Before I even get into this news story, people have opinions, and we did an episode way back, Cody, if you remember, called "Is Comedy Dead?"
And I said it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about it, but at the very least, I think we arrived at the conclusion of like, hey, it's a rough time for it at the least.
Yes.
Just because of the culture and all that. And there's a lot of reasons why, but not least of which was the culture that we live in is not kind to comedies. Because comedy, eventually at some point, you got to make fun of yourself. And people aren't down with that these days.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't like that sort of thing. Well, Adam Devine has come in and given his take. So, like, you know who Adam Devine is.
Unfortunately, I really don't care for many roles Adam's had. I really did not like the show Workaholics at all.
He's pretty good on The Righteous Gemstones.
Yeah.
I never finished watching that, but I thought
It's
he
still
was good.
going.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It's just one of those shows that I don't like. I'm not like super stoked to stay on top of.
Yeah.
And I like Adam. I think he's a funny dude. He was in, of course, the Pitch Perfect movies as well.
And an episode of Community.
Yeah, he was on a podcast, I believe, called The Past Weekend with Theo Vaughn.
Oh.
Are you familiar with that?
With Theo and The Past Weekend, you betcha.
Okay. So, listen, podcasts are interesting because you can get people, if you get people on your pod, they might, because it's a podcast, it feels more laid back, I think, to these guys than an interview. And some of them will talk and a little more, they'll be a little more giving as far as the conversation goes. And Adam got into the discussion with Theo about why he thinks comedy is on a downward trend. Like I said, if you want to listen to our take on this, we had an episode called Is Comedy Dead? Go back through our pods and find it. You'll find mine and Cody's opinion. Adam's opinion's a little different. He says this, quote, "My theory is I think like Marvel ruined it. Because people go to the theater and you expect to watch something that costs $200 million to make, and comedy movies aren't that. I feel like superhero movies kind of ruined comedies." Cody, thoughts?
You know, he might have had a valid point. Might have.
How so?
With like, you get the tongue-in-cheekiness of a Marvel movie. I mean, all the Ant-Mans are kind of funny. The Thors, since Taika's taken over, funny. Guardians of the Galaxy, funny. But they're not necessarily comedies. And so people are laughing without the specific type. But then I would point to Adam Sandler keeps getting paid buku bucks to go on vacation, make a movie for Netflix, and then it's #1 streaming for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the biggest issue I have with that, and I don't know if he recorded this a long time ago or fairly recently, but if he did it fairly recently, this is going to be heartbreaking for him. The biggest movie in the cinemas right now that literally just crossed $1 billion with a B dollars, Barbie, is a comedy by its genre.
Well, and you bring, like, listen, Barbie is a comedy and a satire, which is it's smart comedy, which not, like, no disrespect, but not Adam's wheelhouse.
No. It's far from Adam's wheelhouse.
Sorry, Adam, just saying. It's a satire, which is, we talked about on our Barbenheimer episode, is complex. It has a complex degree of difficulty. And I am willing to concede that what you talked about in particular has an effect on where it is. Like, I think you're more likely to do a comedy and it show up on a streaming network, a movie there. But that's not, like, listen, in today's day and age, that's not an insult. There's movies made for Netflix that get nominated for awards. You know?
Oh, yeah.
So it's just where we want stuff. I will push back a little bit on, well, Marvel movies are kind of funny and kind of so, like, listen, popcorn flicks in the summer have always been like that. Independence Day was, I mean, it's a movie about aliens destroying the earth, and it was funny. Like, that's how summer movies have always been. So I will push back a little bit on, like, the idea of the popcorn flick. Not Marvel movies didn't come up with that. Like, they just perfected it. This is, Independence Day. I don't think it made a Billy.
I don't think so either.
So, but I understand what he's trying to say. I just think that all of those are fine and all of those factor in. But to me, it's still like, no. The reason that studios make Marvel movies or superhero movies instead of comedies is because comedy's really hard to do without pissing people off. Like, why would you put out a comedy movie? Like, think of movies like stuff that doesn't play well, and it's not even that old. Like, let's look at The Hangover, a movie about a bachelor party gone awry, which, by the way, is super. That used to be our comedy wheelhouse. Tons of movies like that. There's so many things in that movie that wouldn't play well now, and any one of those things could get you embargoed. Like, people would be like, don't go see this movie. And movie companies don't want any of that smoke. That's why they're not making these movies anymore. Not because, the superhero movies somehow crowded them out of the creative sphere. Like, I don't know. I think Adam's jumping on a pop. Like, look, it's really popular to bash Marvel and DC right now.
Look at you, Marty Scorsese.
Yeah. And that's fine. Okay, we've had fun with Marty, and we've had fun with James Cameron. Like, we get it. Nobody's claiming that comic book movies are high art. No, but nobody's claiming that.
I did for Watchmen.
Okay, like, you can make that claim. I don't know that he pulled it off. I liked it, but I don't. When you're talking high art, you understand there's appreciation for that from a lot of different areas. Anyways, I think Adam. I think Adam. No, that's not it. Personally, I just believe that that's not it. They didn't ruin comedies. Like, there were 3 Pitch Perfects, bro. Or are there 4? I don't even know. At one time, they were talking about a spinoff with that dude.
Didn't need it.
No, of course you didn't need it. But it was movies, and nobody was saying, like, well, the death of the documentary is all Adam Devine and Pitch Perfect's fault. Like, no one was out there. I just think it's so weird when people in this industry do this. I guess somewhere in his mind, Adam Devine says, well, I'd be a superstar if it wasn't for those darn Marvel movies. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, bro, relax.
Yeah, if I was to say something, it would not be nice. And so I'm not going to say it.
Okay. Yeah, we won't say it at all. That's the only news item I wanted to talk about because it's just so weird to me. And it's so easy. And I feel like it's lazy at this point. It's like, yeah. Marvel Studios ruined all of Hollywood. It wasn't any of their own choices in the movie industry. Wasn't any of that. It wasn't us as a people. Like, we don't all have to take culpability for the culture we've created where comedy's really difficult. No. It was Kevin Feige and Disney's fault. Like, come on.
Well, at least we identified the scapegoat.
It's so dumb. And I'm not here for it. All right. We'll continue Pop Culture Pastor. Like I said, this is a Be Kind Rewind episode. We watch The Burbs. But first, Cody, we got to go out to the lobby.
Raisinets.
No! We're going out to the lobby. We're going to get ourselves a snack, and we're going to answer listener questions. Join us, will you?
Welcome to the lobby.
All right. Welcome back. We're in the lobby. I've got nachos and a Mountain Dew. Cody has chocolate-covered grossness.
And a Mountain Dew.
And a Mountain Dew. We go out into the lobby. We call it the lobby here at Pop Culture Pastor. And we do that. And while we're waiting for our snacks, we answer listener questions. That's what we do. So here we are out in the lobby because, when we go in for the main attraction, we're not going to have time for this. So...
yeah, no one has time for this after you start the main topic.
Yeah, no, not at all. So we asked you questions, or you asked us questions. We asked
you to ask us questions.
We invited you to ask us questions. If I can get that out. Hey, you know what? I'm not embarrassed to say that my brain doesn't work like it used to when I was a young whippersnapper.
I am embarrassed for you.
You should
start reading murder books.
No! Okay, first question. Cody, are you ready?
Yes.
I will let you answer first.
Okay.
This is from our friend and geek of the round table, Jason Giesemann.
Hi, Jason.
Jason's been busy recently. We haven't talked to him in a while, but he does important things.
I feel like every time I go to Silver Dollar City, I see 15 guys that look like Jason Giesemann. Also, when I go to Comic Cons, I see like 15 guys that look like Jason.
There is only one There's only one Jason Giesemann, cousin of Lori Petty in the 1990s movie Tank Girl.
Sweet.
That's just so you know, claim to fame.
Name it and claim it.
Dude, people are talking about Tank Girl right now. Like, I've seen multiple articles that be like, oh, you thought Barbenheimer was awesome. It happened in the 90s inside one movie. So Tank Girl's been getting love. Anyways, Lori Petty's his cousin.
Name it and claim it.
No, I mean, really, he doesn't have to name it and claim it. All right. Jason Giesemann asks, this is a tough one. If you could snap your fingers and one geek culture fan base was gone, which one would you pick?
Okay, so, I mean, I could go multiple routes. I will avoid removing anime fans.
Yeah. Does it make us old that was the first thought? And we're like, I'm only doing that because I'm bitter because I don't get it. We love you, anime fans.
Trekkies.
Oh, Trekkies. The gauntlet is somewhere, Kyle. One of our fans, Kyle's going to take great offense to that. Do you have an explanation for that? I think I know where you're going, but go ahead.
Well, so for me, I can appreciate both Star Wars and Star Trek. Mm-hmm. But then you get like the extremes that are like, you have to like one and not the other. And how dare you for talking about this one instead of the other? And like, if I had to keep one and cast one away, it's going to be Star Trek.
Yeah.
It goes the way of the dodo bird.
Trek fans have a little bit of that little brother syndrome.
They do.
Where they're over the top in any time. So you bring up Star Wars. And yeah, like some of them are like, won't you ever talk about Star Trek? Picard was great. The Strange New Worlds? You watching that? You should be watching that. Like, okay. All right. I mean, part of the problem I'm not watching Strange New Worlds, or I didn't watch Picard, was because there was like 8 projects in between that really were not great. So, I mean, Star Trek for me, Star Trek hasn't been awesome since The Next Generation. That's what I loved. And then they came out with Deep Space Nine, which was okay-ish. Then they came out with Voyager, which I had no interest in that. Then they came out with several things that I haven't liked.
I mean, the
reboot movies were okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first one, The Wrath of Khan. Oh gosh, they messed up. How do you get Benedict Cumberbatch to be Khan and mess that up?
They did it.
J.J. Abrams is a villain. I'm telling you, man.
Like, if I knew there was a big J.J. Abrams fan base, that's who I would get rid of. Yeah. You snap that out of existence. Stop it, JJ. Stop it.
Look, there's a lot of things in Trek I really like. I liked the old movies.
I like LeVar Burton. Jonathan Frakes.
Have you ever I wish we could do sound bites because I would play that right now, that montage of him hosting that show or start kicking off that show he hosted.
Beyond belief, fact or fiction.
Have you ever kicked a pumpkin in the pale moonlight? Yeah. I cannot disagree with that one. Although I do have sympathy for the Trek fans because here's the thing. I think Trek is smarter than Star Wars.
You betcha.
I think it is, and I think it's complex, and I think the reason I don't like a lot of the newer stuff is because they tried to be more Star Wars, right? Like the remakes, they're flashy. They look good. I liked the actors they picked. But at the end of the day, there was something about Star Trek that I really liked that it was kind of missing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but little brother syndrome will get you every time. It'll get you every time. Okay. Oh, I didn't answer the question.
I was going to say, are you just going to wipe out Star Trek as well?
Look, the easy answer here is Zack Snyder fans.
Ouch.
Not you so much, Cody, and not our friend and geek of the round table, Scotty, because you guys are civil human beings. But you would have to admit that online, that is about as toxic. The DC fandom in general has this split right down the middle, and it's about as toxic as it can possibly be. Like, between Zack Snyder people and not Zack Snyder people. Now, I thought the movies, Zack Snyder movies, I'm just neutral with them, except for the original cuts of Batman and Superman and Justice League. But it turns out that those weren't really Zack's movies. So in retrospect, I've kind of softened on my stance with Zack because I did like Watchmen. Even though it was different, that it wasn't exactly the same as the graphic novel. A lot of people had a problem with that. And I really liked the first 2/3 of Man of Steel. I really think 300 is a Zack Snyder perfect movie. Like, it just has everything that he should bring to a movie. I'm actually kind of excited to see Rebel Moon when it comes out.
And then Star Wars kick rocks.
So I am not a Zack Snyder hater, and that makes me want to be like, well, I am not going to choose the Zack Snyder fans.
Okay.
So you're asking, so what fandom am I erasing? And that fandom is going to be, you ready for this?
Yes.
Star Wars.
Oh, snap.
The entire Star Wars fandom. I could just do without them.
That's a toxic fan base as well.
I cannot read a thread on Twitter with people with Star Wars opinions where it just blows my mind. Like, forget about, if I see something about The Last Jedi on Twitter, I just skip right over that. Because for me, if you watch The Last Jedi and you were extreme in either direction, I just wonder how. Like, if you're like, it was a perfect movie, Dave, it was the best Star Wars movie ever. Or if you were like, it was the worst, Rian Johnson should be drugged through the streets because he ruined Star Wars. I just don't understand. I don't get it. And to me, that's just all coming from this toxic place in the Star Wars fandom that has gotten ever more toxic. Disney holds a lot of the responsibility for this. And Kathleen Kennedy, I mean, she doesn't escape blame. Like,
looking at you, George Lucas.
Well, George, it would be amazing to be able to talk to George Lucas and have him be like totally unfiltered, to just say exactly what he thinks of what's gone on with Star Wars since he sold it.
So I will say, I think that The Last Jedi is the best out of the prequels and sequels from the original trilogy. So you keep the original trilogy off by itself. Out of the other 6 movies, it's the best.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like it too. But I wouldn't sit here and be like,
How dare you?
yeah, it's the fandom is so weird and it's so extreme. It's polarized.
Will Annie Skywalker can't show his face in public. Hayden Christensen finally was able to show his face in public after like 20 years.
Like, look, it's so polarized. You're gonna find people out there, and I've seen him and heard him who think the prequels are all just great filmmaking, and you're just like, oh, okay. Like, look, I'm not saying people that it holds a special place in their heart because they were kids when they saw it. I'm talking about people who will defend them as great filmmaking, and you're just like, yeah,
the lightsaber duel
is amazing.
nailed it.
Yeah, that 15 minutes of Phantom Menace at the end is stinking amazing. Unfortunately, there was like another 2 hours of movie
Before
around that.
that.
So yeah, Star Wars fandom is like, I don't even like to wade in those waters. Too many sharks. Not enough chum. Next question. Byron Westbrook, who is a Ute here in Chanute.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a question from the Ute. He says, this is a Lion King question.
Sweet.
Is Scar a hyena rights activist? Is he really the villain or a product of the way Mufasa treated him as a kid?
So I know there's a whole lot of backstory with the Lion King characters. I don't care about it. In this movie, Scar's a fascist. And
But I don't think he's talking presently though.
I'm just saying,
Okay, go ahead.
that in the movie, The Lion King,
Yeah, the imagery's pretty clear.
he's a fascist and he really cares less about the hyenas. It's all about him being at the seat of power.
Yeah, that first question is pretty easy to put down.
Fascist.
That he doesn't really care about the hyenas. He's just using them.
If there was something I've learned from Barbie and Oppenheimer, we don't like fascists.
Yeah, and that's what fascists do, even if the hyenas have a real plight.
Yes.
They have a real backstory where they've really been broken and hurt. He doesn't really care about them. He's using their plight
Oh, yeah.
to make his position stronger to do whatever he wants to do. However, the second question. Now this is where we get into our pastor place.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a question inside his question here. Is anyone truly evil, or do they get that way? That like nobody's made evil, right? Like Mufasa didn't he didn't get held up by the monkey over the cliff and was evil at first. Evil, like brokenness, just happens. And so and we're all affected by brokenness in different and varying degrees. And so I think there's an interesting question of theirs. Like, yeah, we're all a product of how brokenness affected our lives when we were growing.
Yeah. And within, I guess, within lion culture, there's a hierarchy, especially within the males. And you see Mufasa has this huge mane and he's bulky, and Scar is kind of scraggly looking with his mane, scrawny. And that shows that there's definitely a difference in power. And so it can quickly become an us versus them dichotomy. And the quickest way to overthrow that power is to have people that are outcast, which the hyenas are. They're segregated to the Badlands, and you stay there at the Badlands. And then, we will overthrow this government, cause a coup, and then he ascends to his place of power. Yes, He did not start off broken. Mufasa probably did have a little bit to do with it, but we all have our choices to make, whether we act on our very evil, conceited thoughts or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Royalty makes it even more interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So you have Mufasa, who's, but basically he's the next in line. He's going to be king. That's I'd love to.
Well, Mufasa is king. Simba's the next in line.
Well, right. No. That's what I meant. At some point, Mufasa was the next in line when they were young. And there's added dynamics to that. So, like, I think about like Prince William and Prince Harry. So Prince Harry, knowing that he's never going to be the guy, has two choices. He either like really decides, I wish I could be that guy, and you become this Mufasa-like character because he's clearly getting broken. Like here, like look, William and Harry clearly have all this brokenness in their upbringing, not least of which is, their mom dies in, tragicness because, we're stupid and we paparazzi and blah, blah, blah. But they're dealing with all this stuff. So Harry has two choices. Either he grumbles and becomes this, dark Mufasa-like guy that's scheming and is like, I wish I should be the king. I'm the one who deserves this. I'm way better than him. Or his other choices go the other direction and say, I don't care about any of this. I don't want any of this, which is the direction he picked. He went the opposite of Mufasa.
Scar.
Yeah. You didn't think you were getting a Lion King British royalty mashup here, but that's what you're getting.
Because now that William's had kids, it's impossible.
Yeah. Harry will never be the guy, but now Harry's married to Meghan, and they're like, we don't want the spotlight. And then like, let's go do a 3-hour podcast. Like, okay. I thought you said you didn't want to be in the spotlight.
If you don't want to be in the spotlight and want to do another podcast, we're available.
Harry and Meghan's official answer is, we're just trying to be normal people, and we're going on The View that day. All right. I hope that sufficiently answered your question, Byron. It's time to go back into the studio, and we're going to do, it's a Be Kind Rewind, and we're talking about The Burbs with Tom Hanks. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Pop Culture Pastor.
Welcome back, Pop Culture Pastor. It's time. We haven't done a Be Kind Rewind in a while, Cody, and I've been looking forward to this one because this movie is on my staying home from school playlist. Right?
Oh.
Every time I stayed home from school when I was sick or maybe not sick, you know what I'm saying? This was on Goonies. This is on the short list with Goonies, Return of the Jedi, and then this movie was the afternoon movie. It was in the matinee, as we call it.
2 out of the 3 are Corey Feldman movies.
This is true.
Which is alarming.
Well, you just have to understand the 80s.
I understand the 80s. I lived the 80s.
No, you didn't. There was a revolving door. So usually it gave me time for about 4 movies. And that 4th movie was a revolving door. And listen, Corey Feldman could show up again. License to Drive. That was getting viewed sometimes with the Coreys. Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. Stand By Me. Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your problem with Corey Feldman?
Oh, we'll get into it.
Oh, okay. Look, he's had it tough, man. Don't be easy on him.
I will.
Okay. We watched The Burbs, one of my favorite movies growing up, and we're going to talk about it. Came out in 1989, directed by Joe Dante of Gremlins fame.
Oh, I thought Dante's Inferno fame.
No, he directed Gremlins. Inner Space was another one of his big movies. This was distributed by Universal Pictures. I'm just going to read you the blurb here. Should I do it in my movie guy voice?
Don LaFontaine.
In a world settling in for some time off in his suburban home, Ray Peterson, played by Tom Hanks, Ray Peterson's vacation becomes a horror when the Klopeks, a suspiciously odd family, move in down the block, enlisting the aid of his paranoid buddy Art, played by Rick Dukeman, and his militiaman neighbor Mark Rumsfeld, played by Bruce Dern. Ray sends his son and wife, played by Carrie Fisher, away on a trip while he investigates the Klopeks. When a neighbor disappears, Ray and his cohorts risk their lives to save their cul-de-sac from the clutches of evil. That sounds so serious.
It does.
Because this movie's funny. It's a comedy.
Yeah.
And it's weird because okay, so right off the top, as we're speaking broadly about the movie, Joe Dante, I think it doesn't get enough love, especially when you look at this movie and Gremlins. For him being able to make a movie that's a comedy, it's funny, that has seriously kind of like creepy, scary moments. Yeah, you're just going to shake your head. This is a podcast. You're aware of that, right? Nobody can hear you shaking your head.
I'm not giving him credit.
You're not. Okay, you're not giving him credit.
So I'll read you a blurb from my friend Gene. Gene Siskel. You've heard of Gene? Mean okay. Gene.
Do we really want to know what the critics said back in 1989? Like, look, I'll just tell you, the Rotten Tomatoes score is 54%, so critics were split. But the movie goer score is like 89%.
Here is what my friend Mean Gene said.
All right, hit me with Mean Gene.
Tom Hanks stars in a weak comedy about the terrible goings-on in a suburban home. The script would like to be a horror film, a comedy, and a commentary on suburban living, but it doesn't hit any target.
Well, agree to disagree, Gene.
Mean Gene!
I love this movie. Also, hitting him in the script is maybe a little unfair. Here's something interesting you might not have known, and it's relevant for our time.
Oh.
They were in the middle of a writer's strike when filming this movie. So
Bazinga.
There were no rewrites. Like, common thing to do during a movie is there's several rewrites going on while they're filming, doing all this. So there is tons of ad-lib in this movie that makes for the more genuine reactions between. I think it improves the way the actors work together. So they're reacting to a lot of things. So for instance, the ambulance scene at the end where Tom Hanks is kind of blowing up at everybody and he's like, I'm hurt. Take me to the hospital. He throws the gurney into the back of the ambulance. Take me to the hospital. That's all ad lib. It's not script. And so everybody's reactions, if you look at the reactions of the other actors while he's doing that, are legitimate reactions.
So they should have paid my dear friend Carrie Fisher some extra dough.
Yeah.
Because she actually did a lot of script writing.
Mm-hmm. But she couldn't because there was a writer's strike. We're learning that now. Like, you can't act in that function. She'd have been a scab.
Be a scab. Take the money and run. As we're learning, people are losing their homes.
While you bring up Carrie Fisher, we should point out, because we're not going to talk a lot about Carrie Fisher, I would imagine, in this pod. So let's stop right here and give her all the props for being a very plain Jane-ish character person in this movie.
Very much.
When we know she's capable of being so much more, and yet she plays the part of suburbanite wife better than you. I always forget she's in this movie because it's so amazing. Like when someone can be bland and fit in the background when you know that that's not their personality, it's just as amazing as someone putting on some bombastic acting performance. And so I'm just giving Carrie Fisher a shout out right here off the top. And by the way, she looks great in this movie as a suburbanite housewife in the late 80s. And she still looks great.
Yeah.
And awesome. She was just awesome in this movie. Anyways, I had an appreciation for her as I was watching this last night. of like, man, Carrie Fisher just does not get enough love of how amazing and brilliant she is. Anyways, so yeah, this movie is it's a movie about a suburban neighborhood with just kind of ridiculous, exaggerated characters. That's what makes it fun. And they're all paranoid and all these things. And there's some deep themes that we're going to get into. But led by Tom Hanks, who's sort of the skeptic. He doesn't want to believe that the neighbors are up to something. Although it's clear through the entire movie that they're up to something. And we'll get into that. But there's finally a showdown at the end where they decide they're going to get to the bottom of it. Chaos ensues. And yeah, that's the movie. So, Cody, on your viewing, did you watch it yesterday?
Yes.
What holds up in this movie? You're not a fan. I can tell you're not a fan.
So honestly, if we're going to go with weird Tom Hanks comedies from the 80s, Money Pit's where I fall.
Yeah, Money Pit's good.
This one doesn't hit me in any funny way. So, like, I really have very little, like, strong things that are like, oh, yeah, this is great. Or this holds up. Like,
it's not, I will say in your defense, it's not like, I'm trying to find another movie around this time to compare it to. It's not straight up comedy. It's dark comedy and it's subtle in a lot of ways.
Like, I'm going to say a movie that I prefer, and this will be a hot take. Nothing But Trouble.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because, like, everyone, their mom critically hated that movie, but I actually really enjoyed that. And it has some dark moments.
I will say, I think the reason this movie is so polarizing as far as where you come out on it is, yeah, it's not straight up. So if you are coming into this thing thinking you're going to get Big or Splash or any other number of Tom Hanks comedies that he was in, you're going to be disappointed because it's not the same. And a lot of the comedy comes from the actual delivery of the line, not the line itself.
Tommy is very, like, straight faced the whole movie.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the side characters.
Which there's one side character that just steals the show and steals my laughter from everyone else.
Please tell me it's Art.
It's not Art.
Is it Bruce Dern, the military guy?
Yes.
Yeah. They're both great in this movie. They're great. For me, I'm going to just kind of piggyback on what I just said. The things that hold up are the wonderful job that the actors are doing in this. There's something in the way they deliver a lot of the lines that just crack me up. Right at the beginning, where you're getting this suburban paradise. Tom Hanks is on vacation. Ray, his
staycation.
Staycation, before the term's ever invented. And he sees Art in his backyard hunting a crow. And he's like, Art's got a gun. And like, immediately, you don't know who Art is, but you know it's bad that he has a gun. Just in the delivery that Tom Hanks gives you the line cracks me up every time. Then the whole end of that first scene, where Art comes in, he's just eating everything in their house. So Ray's wife made this breakfast. Princess Leia made breakfast. And of course, Tom Hanks wasn't eating any of it, but Ray will, or Art will, the neighbor. And then he's getting stuff out of the fridge and eating that. It's hilarious.
I think I chuckled when the dog pooped on the lawn.
The dog, by the way, this is the same dog that's in Silence of the Lambs the next year.
That dog is a celebrity.
This dog's famous, and I believe he gets that role because of his amazing turn in this movie. playing Queenie the poodle. And yeah, the opening sequence, you get Queenie pooping in the Mark Rumsfeld's lawn. And that's like a comedy. That's like a recurring thing through the whole movie, is that this dog poos in other people's yards. Like, let's just stop right there. Queenie's owner, Walter, who much of the movie is his disappearance is based around that. And I'm like, why do they care about this dude so much? He's not nice.
No. So if I was to compare him to someone, he's Mr. Wilson from Dennis the Menace.
Yes. Yes, absolutely he is. Let me see if I can tell you who he was played by. Art, played by Gail Gordon. Plays Walter. Not Art, plays Walter. So Gail Gordon. And yeah, he's not very nice. He clearly knows his dog is going to go poo in Mark Rumsfeld's lawn. And Rumsfeld is an ex-military guy. He's been in Nam. Some of the best lines come from Rumsfeld.
Yes.
Very early on in the movie, the two neighbors, Art and Ray, Rick Dukeman and Tom Hanks's characters, they're daring each other to go ring the doorbell of the weird neighbors. After they use the knocker on the door, their 669 address, the 9 flips and it says 666. It's a funny gag.
It was.
Funny biblical gag.
Then the whole sign falls, and then bees. Not the bees.
Run to water, men! It's so hilarious to me throughout the entire movie how Rumsfeld keeps referring to them as soldiers. Soldiers! Soldiers! And I want to do that to my kids when they're fighting. Soldiers! Calm down! It's funny because like I had people like that in my family. I knew people like this.
So I guess in the 90s and aughts, those people I feel weren't necessarily in the suburbs.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
So like, yes, I know people like Rumsfeld, but they weren't living in the nice white picket fenced in areas of...
They were in the trailer parks, y'all.
They were. They got downgraded.
Back to the dog. As they're walking up to the house in that opening scene to ring the doorbell or greet them, they play so he's constantly, Joe Dante, the director, he's constantly playing this like Western themology through the movie as like they're heroes in the Wild West. And he's playing this like very like, I don't know, good, the bad, the ugly type music as they're walking up to the house. And he's doing close-ups of all the characters as they're locked into the proceedings, what's going on. And he's doing close-ups and he finally gets to a close-up of the dog. Kills me. That is an example of a filmmaker just in the way he's filming the movie can make you laugh. There's no line there. He just does a close-up of the dog. And I can tell you weren't impressed.
It was a scene.
Oh, you're such a tough nut, Cody.
I am.
Some of the lines are my favorite thing about this movie. The way they're delivered. So more things that hold up for me. Bruce Dern as the ex-military guy. Almost everything he says is just, I just love it. It smells like they're cooking a cat over there. So good. Red Rover, let Ray go on over. It just, like Bruce Dern playing. The funny thing about the suburbs and what he nails in this movie, Joe Dante, what they nail in this movie about the 80s suburbs is you would think driving through this neighborhood, and man, these are people that are put together. These are people that got life figured out. They know what they're doing. But then when you get into it and you start meeting the people, you understand, oh no, they're weirdos. They're just because they got the white picket fences and everything is, looking good. No. They're odd folks.
They are odd folks. And I mean, the reason Tom Hanks is on vacation or staycation is because he's so stressed out and has something wrong with his tummy. and brain as well, because they talk about, well, Carrie Fisher talks about, like, I want the man back that I married.
And again, yeah, the delivery of the lines in again are what holds up. He cannot come out till he resembles the man I married. Carol, we don't got that kind of time.
That line did make me laugh out loud.
Same. I feel also same. Like if my wife said, well, he can't come out till he resembles the man I married, I'm like, well, we're going to be here a while. So the lines, what else? I've never seen that. I've never seen someone drive their trash to the curb and bang the heck out of it with a stick. I've never seen that.
So, like, as he's saying that, I'm like, I've definitely seen people drive their trash to the curb.
Have you?
Yes.
That's nuts.
I've never seen them bang on it with a stick. So I was with Thomas at that part.
That young man, played by Courtney Gaines, who was also in Children of the Corn, had a creepy turn in Children of the Corn. But he plays Hans Klopek in the movie. And yeah, he's actually a good-looking dude. Like when you see an actor. But he often in the 80s played like the very weird-looking, bearded, outcast guy. He's in Children of the Corn. What other movie was he kind of famously in? Let me look at his movies here real quick. He was in Can't Buy Me Love, but he was kind of a nerd in that one. Yeah, it's good stuff. He's a great 80s character actor. So yeah, and it just a lot of what makes this movie enjoyable for me is again the acting and the way they deliver the lines. So when Ray and Art are talking in his basement about who his neighbors are, and Art, of course, is the guy who's raising all the trouble, right? He's from the beginning like these dudes are Satanists, convincing Ray's son that they're evil Satanists. And like, we're not talking about real world, like people who just think that they're worshiping something just to be like kind of counterculture and whatever. I don't know what motivates people of that nature in the real world, but in this world, they're full on like evil people, evil, like personified. Mm-hmm. And Art is trying to convince Ray of that. And Ray's not interested. And so first of all, they have this book of like this huge leather bound book of demonology. And I'm like, where did they get that? That you can't just go to the public library and pick that up, right?
Maybe.
So they're in their basement reading, and Ray's getting annoyed with it. So he covers his ears like, I'm not listening to you. And of course, it's one of my favorite sequences of the movie because Art says, Ray, you're chanting. Ray, you're chanting, Ray. Like, look, it says right here. It's like, I'm going to kill everyone. He starts chanting along with him, of course, super exaggerated. And he delivers just this great line. He's like, Ray, once they get in here, and he points to his head, it's all over, buddy. I adore that part of the movie. And I just pretty much adore anything with Art. Art to me is the most hilarious character.
Okay.
Because he's like, look, one of the things this movie gets right that I love is suburban malaise. Right?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is Hollywood thinks suburban lives are boring, right? Probably most people that live in big cities on the coast think that suburban life is boring. This is their view of it. And there's some truth to that, I suppose. People in the suburbs are probably taken to legendary stories. I know that here in a small town, there are lots of legend stories where people got like, accosted somewhere, or stories of even like, we love true crime, even past legendary stories of murder that you don't even know if they're really true or not. They just make their way down through the generations. Like in our town, there's a story about the old grocery store, the Save-A-Lot, that became known as the Stab-A-Lot.
Well, that actually happened.
Now, see, that's what I'm saying. But they become legendary, right? And this is something that happens like in neighborhoods and suburban neighborhoods. There's legends, suburban legends, not urban legends, suburban legends. But it's also fair to say that something we do is we imagine monsters. So part of the genius of this movie, in my opinion, is you don't know whether the Klopeks are the monsters they're imagining them to be. And for a little bit, it looks like they're not.
Spoilers.
Yeah. And so I dig this idea that in the suburbs, and it's played, of course, it's an exaggeration, but that like, because there's this malaise of living the quote unquote perfect life, you got the white picket fence. You've got marriages all over this movie that are not doing well.
No.
Husbands and wives who aren't really on the same page, don't like to be together in some cases, except for Rumsfeld, the military guy and his wife who look like a mismatch.
Very much so.
They look like they're great.
Although my least favorite Goonie, it says some lines about like, oh, no tan line today, Mrs. Rumsfeld. And she just smiles. And
I love that Mark is not jealous. He just says, that kid's a meatball. She's being nice to him and not being like, hey, that's rude. You know, like, first of all, you say that today. This is many instances in this movie of like how things have changed. Like, it would not be cute or charming for an 18-year-old or however Corey Feldman's old he's supposed to be in this movie, a young adult, to say that to your neighbor, older female.
you knock it off,
Yeah,
Corey.
it would not. But this movie actually plays it off like it probably would have went down then. She's charmed. He's like, that kid's a meatball. Don't listen to him. Don't be nice to him.
I like to think that Stranger Things, the season that they had Max's brother be a lifeguard, that he was trying to be Corey Feldman and did it way better than Corey Feldman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's all about the moms.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that I'm down with the Corey Feldman slander going on here.
You're going to get a lot more of it.
Because I kind of think what Corey Feldman does in this movie is sort of underneath the surface brilliance.
So everyone and their mom on the interwebs said, okay, Midwestern suburb. And when they do the weird zoom in,
It's Iowa. It's clearly Iowa.
it's clearly Iowa. And how does Mr. Feldman talk? West Coast, bruh. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's Corey Feldman.
Get out of here. No one in Iowa's talking like that.
Well, you didn't live in Iowa in 1989, did you?
I lived in Kansas in 1989, which is basically Iowa 2.0.
Listen, when I was growing up, there were kids living in the suburbs of Lawrence, Kansas, living all that rich life who talked like Eminem. So,
Well, you got.
They didn't grow up in Detroit. It happens.
He was born in St. Joe, Missouri.
And in the 80s, it was kind of popular thing to be like, hey, surfer bum guy, even though we didn't live anywhere near the ocean. People did. I think that's a thing.
It might have been a thing, but he did it way too naturally.
Yeah. That's true. I didn't even know that it took place in Iowa until I paid attention to the opening crawl last night.
As I'm watching the opening crawl last night, I'm like, did they do this with claymation?
It was animated, and it's one of the first times they do that to the Universal logo. It's become a thing where, like, they play around a lot with the studio logos now, but this was one of the first instances of that, and it's animated.
And then I give thanks that there's now Google satellites that you can just zoom in and then get a street level view.
Yeah, let me tell you, that opening plays well in 1989. That was like groundbreaking. Like, whoa, that's cool.
It does not hold up today.
No, Google Earth made that a lot more cool. What also holds up? The predilection towards lawn care.
Yeah, that one is legit.
Everybody judging everybody for their lawns, which, listen, we did a thing on the radio where we talked about how lawn care was made up by the Scotts Company back in like the 1940s or 50s.
Big lawn care.
Yeah, big lawn care, as we called it, and it's all a lie. And so, boy, that played differently to me watching it this time and being like, yeah, what a sham. They made us all care about our lawns and judge each other for them.
Yeah. And now we get upset with cute little dogs for pooing in our yards.
Let's see. Anything else? Oh, the scene in the back where the dog finds the bone. the femur bone. Do you know what this is, Ray? It's a bone. This just happens to be a femur, Ray. It's a femur bone. I love Tom Hanks's character's complete just obtuseness to the idea that that's not a bone that you normally see dig up in your backyard.
Biology 101.
Like, that's either a dinosaur bone.
So it was at that point, I'm like, why aren't you all calling the cops?
Right. I love the reaction is not to call the cops, because that's what would happen. If you found any human remains of any kind, the cops would be called.
And again, a femur's huge.
Yes. When he's holding it and they're not paying attention because they're talking, he keeps throwing it for the dog. You're meant as a moviegoer to be like, do you not see what you're holding? And then the comedic effect of, Ray, this is Walter. The close up, the camera going in and out. That's super comedy for me.
It didn't land with me.
It doesn't land with you. See, we clearly are on two comedy wavelengths right here. Mark in the dress fatigues for the dinner party also cracks me up. So he's pretty much wearing camouflage most of the movie. Even one scene where they're interacting with the garbage men in the street to try and get a look at the Clopex garbage because they think they threw a body away. And he's out there in a robe with camouflage tighty-whities, except they're not white, they're camouflage. And I love they're having an argument as he's sitting in the back of the garbage truck.
It's what real men do.
Who's going to pick up this mess? Who's going to pick up this mess? You are, because you are the garbage man. Very rude.
I did love that one of the garbage men's like, well, it is their right to go through the garbage of their neighbors once it gets to the curbside.
Yeah, always a fun trope. Also played in a movie called Men at Work with Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen, where one of the trash men is always super brilliant. That's a Hollywood trope. And yes, yeah, you got the guy talking about, well, actually, according to this court case.
I feel there was a Tony Danza movie where he was a trash man.
Yeah. It was a trope. Definitely a trope of Hollywood back then, of the brilliant trash man.
And then he might have went pro as a kicker.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I remember that movie. I don't remember the name of it.
Be Kind Rewind.
My promise to you is we will never Be Kind Rewind a Tony Danza flick. That's my promise. Samantha. What doesn't hold up, Cody? I feel like you've got a list of these. What doesn't hold up?
Well, I mean, Corey Feldman's weird, flirtation with the older neighbor lady we already talked about. Mm-hmm.
By the way, I'm not saying it was a good thing. I'm just saying that's a product of the times.
It was.
Just like we talked about with the Barbie movie, where I called question into the cat calling that happens in that movie. Like, that would have been more, if she'd have traveled back in time to like the 80s, it would have fit.
It would have. And then Corey Feldman would have been there cat calling her.
And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying for the time, that was something, yes, that could have happened.
Again, so there is a Aunt Jemima bottle.
Oh, yeah.
I spotted that and I'm like, you can't have that in a movie.
The product placement in this movie's on point. There's actually Gremlins cereal. which was a
Yes.
real thing. Joe Dante, being the director of Gremlins, probably did that intentionally.
One cute Easter egg that wasn't an Easter egg at that time, but now is. Mr. Rogers is playing.
Yes.
And Thomas Hanks will eventually become Mr. Rogers. So
Tom Hanks kind of mournfully singing the words, mouthing the words of, I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you, where he'll eventually 30 years later play Mr. Rogers. Yeah, that was kind of cool.
there's only one person of color in the whole movie. And it's right after the house explodes and everyone's gathering around. And there's this.
He's a detective. He's a police detective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got a position of authority, which is good. But yeah, there's not. It's all okay. It's the suburbs in the 80s.
I get you. But and then the biggest tragedy of the whole movie, and it gets overlooked. It doesn't even get brought up. When Tom Hanks and Art blow up the house, where's that giant beast of a dog?
Oh, that dog died.
That dog got exploded.
No, they take the dog with them, right? I think you see the dog in the car in a quick shot where they show them. So
the dog's not there when they come back.
I think the Klopeks. Okay, so like the scene where the Klopeks drive in, they see the commotion, and then they back off, and it's implied they're going to go get the police. I think there's a shot of the car where you can see the dog in the back seat. I think they took the dog with them.
That better be the case, because if they killed this mutt, I will be upset and calling PETA.
No animals were harmed in the making of this motion picture, Cody.
That better be true.
The things I think didn't hold up in the movie, the wallpaper in Ray's house. Man, I can't explain the fascination we had with wallpaper back in the 80s, but woof.
I did like that Rumsfeld was picking at the wallpaper in the creepy neighbor's home.
What do you got in the basement, Air Klopek? He is gold in that entire scene. That entire scene. About a 9 on the attention scale there, Rube. Just gold.
So I feel that they have misbilled this movie.
Okay. Explain.
Honestly, Tom Hanks doesn't do much.
Yeah, he's not not being Tom Hanks in this movie.
And like Rumsfeld and Art, they even have scenes by themselves. Mm-hmm. I would have had Rumsfeld be the lead. Like, this is really a movie about Rumsfeld and not so much about Raymond, who is...
I agree with that, but I would have went with Art. To me, Rick Dukeman, and I'll get to this later, I love Art. Art's the man. He's my favorite. Here's the big thing that doesn't hold up for me, though, in the movie. To me, as we discussed with the femur, there is no question that these people are on the up and up. Mm-hmm. Like the whole conceit of the movie kind of rides on this last second and after they blow up the house realization of, I guess they weren't doing what we thought they were doing. Like, no. They were digging in their backyard in the middle of the night in a rainstorm with cloaks on. Like, that's not normal behavior. Something is up.
They have a furnace that can heat up to 5,000 degrees.
Like, that is evidence in and of itself. Even if you ignore all the other stuff. Like, no. These people are not on the good.
Like, think about it. And it's not attached to the power grid. Art acknowledges that.
Yeah, there's so much there to be like, no, you're right. This is fishy. This is all fishy. So like the conceit at the end of the movie and the cops being like, you're all going to prison for a long time for messing with these nice people, the Klopeks. Like, no, there was plenty of evidence to these people to be weird, but it also goes like, yeah, y'all should have called the cops like an hour ago. Once they found the femur.
As soon as Rube opens his mouth, I knew guilty.
Reuben, played by Brother Theodore. Really, that's his name. That's what it's listed as in the credits. His name is Brother Theodore. amazing. Just amazing. Okay, real quick, let's talk about deep themes. Deep themes going on here. Hollywood paints the suburbs as a place where nothing ever happens until it does. That these people are so bored. Like, it's weird because you think what you're getting into is a satire of people bored in the suburbs and what it drives them to do. But then it validates everything.
Yeah.
I actually feel like Corey Feldman, even if our Klopeks weren't, even if the neighborhoods we grew up in, our version of the Klopeks, which there always was. There was always a house in every neighborhood where the people were weird and you had all these stories that probably weren't true. I actually agree with Corey Feldman's character in this movie. Our neighborhoods were exciting. Even in some neighborhoods, I didn't live in a lot of suburbia type neighborhoods, but our neighborhoods were never boring. And that life wasn't boring. It was exciting to us. And one of my favorite scenes is when Corey Feldman has a girl come over and she's like, why can't we go to a movie? It's like, this is better than a movie. And he's right, man. The neighborhood was always entertaining.
He's wrong. No one's ever out. Like, these people are constantly out. I get it that the 80s, they would have been out more, but they're always out.
Holmes, we only had like 4 channels.
I know, but they're always out.
Yeah.
You weren't supposed to be out after the lights were on.
Oh, but we always were.
And so I'm calling shenanigans.
No, that's all right. Another one of the deeper themes running through this, men and their hero complex. Like, part of the big crutch in this movie is the trouble that these men get themselves into because they think they got to be the heroes. I mean, like, look, we're never told what Ray's job is, but it's clearly some boring cubicle office job because that's like a whole big part of the movie is how he needed a break because he was having like an existential crisis, midlife crisis.
Happens to the best of us.
Art is, he's wearing a shirt at one point that he's like, I think he's like maybe a plumber or a phone guy. He's a phone guy.
Yeah.
And he doesn't talk much about his job. His marriage is clearly struggling because at the end of the movie, Rumsfeld tells him his house is on fire and his wife is home. And he's like, my wife is home. And you're like, oh, that's funny, but also sad. But yeah, there's something about like the white male savior complex, which I find interesting in this movie. The movie doesn't really explore it other than the general, hey, these dudes do things they shouldn't because they see themselves as the saviors of their neighborhood.
Someone has to.
But I think that's running through the movie. And I think in our current setup, I think in our current time, you can watch this movie and you see how things have changed over time. Because the funny thing about this movie that doesn't happen anymore, that did happen back then, is these men are all vastly different. Ray and his family would clearly be Democrats, and Mark is definitely a Trumper, right? This dude would be a Trumper. He's like the army guy. They're super conservative. And in today's day, there is no way these two families would be friendly.
Yeah. For me, what stood out was the level of... So I guess it's all about the neighborhood relationship dynamics. So there's mistrust of neighbors, even ones that you've known forever. Mm-hmm. The old man that lets his dog poop on the lawn. Well, he's just a bitter old man, but yet there's a deep caring underneath it. Mm-hmm. And then there's gossip amongst the neighbors about everyone and everything. And I imagine if we would have not had art be such a focal point, that we would have heard gossip about, well, where's Mrs. Art?
Yeah. And this is, by the way, this is you're hitting on what I'm trying to say, which is we've always been different in our neighborhoods. There's people who have different things, but back in that time, you were more likely to rally around each other and say, hey, they're weird, but they're my people. This is my neighborhood. That's something that's completely lost now.
And you get it fully in the scene where Carrie Fisher's like, we should have just done this instead of run around playing detective, and gone over and greeted our new neighbors, and they make brownies and they go over.
There go the darn brownies. The running theme through the movie is they keep falling through their porch.
They do.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So that's the big thing for me. There's obviously some deep themes being played in the 80s context of what it means to live in suburbia in the 80s. What it does, and that's addressed through like all of their savior complexes. They're bored with their lives, so they imagine excitement all around them. And then for me, in our context, the deep theme that he didn't know was good, Joe Dante didn't intend, is to see the differences in the way people relate to each other. So you've got like Art, who would have been the annoying neighbor that nobody liked now, and he's a meddler. And you've got the super conservative Republican and probably churchgoer, the Rumsfelds. Then you have Ray and his family, which are probably super liberal, bleeding heart Democrats, And none of these people would have got along. And then you throw in that they also hang out with this 20-year-old Corey Feldman, who's kind of a dope, but he's included in that group as well. And that was indicative of the time. That was just a thing that was more likely to happen then than it is now. And so there is something that makes me kind of sad watching it, of like, man, I wish we could go back to that time where we didn't all have to live in an echo chamber. We could hang out with people who thought different things, and we were good with each other.
At least we're able to share a lemonade.
Yeah, right. Okay. Who is the winner of this movie, Cody?
Well, this is going to come out of left field because it was not Tom Hanks, which makes me sad to say. Bruce Dern.
Bruce Dern. Yes.
Closely followed by Darla the dog.
The dog of Silence of the Lamb fame.
Yes. But no, Bruce Dern stole every scene he was in. I loved that he had an automated flag pole that you just push a button and the flag immediately raises.
Yeah. God bless the USA.
And so that had me chuckling early on, and then his delivery of things, and there were some lines, because I read that they ad-libbed quite a bit, and that he ad-libbed some funny lines, and yeah, I was here for it.
After they blow up their house and the Klopek's there, he's like, you got a lawsuit on your hand, mister. You're right, man. Bruce Dern is so amazing in that movie. He's not my winner, though. My winner is Rick Dukeman. I'm Rick Dukeman for life. He's always been the bit guy. So in Groundhog Day, he kind of steals a couple scenes as the drunk town denizen. Bill Murray kind of rides with him in his car at one point, because Bill Murray kind of befriends their characters on one of his repeat days. And Rick Dukeman, he's this character guy that's in a lot of movies. He was the dad in Scary Movie. He's an Encino Man. I mean, he's just in a ton of stuff, but in this movie, I feel like he gets his chance to shine as Art. And as we discussed, the supporting players are almost more of the focus than Tom Hanks.
Word.
And man, this movie, I was quoting Rick Dukeman lines of this movie when this movie came out for years. I just love Rick Dukeman in this movie, even if he is the obnoxious neighbor. And it made me wish, he's a Canadian comedian by trade. That's how he gets his start. And I just wish Rick Dukeman would have got more love from Hollywood, because I would have liked it. He's passed on now, but I would have loved to see more Rick Dukeman movies. Love him. Loved him in this movie. He was always my favorite in this movie. I'll lead off my loser of the movie just because it ties into your winner. Close second for who rules this movie is Bruce Dern. He's almost my winner, but he's definitely my loser, because I'm Bruce Dern should have been highlighted and should have went on to big roles after this. And he's kind of like, listen, he's not respected in Hollywood. He's been in a couple movies where he's like the old guy. He's in like Oscar nominated movies where he's the eccentric old guy.
Well, someone needs to be the eccentric old guy.
So he most recently was in Nebraska, which was, I believe, an Oscar nominated film. And he was good in that. Laura Dern's dad, if you didn't know. Laura Dern of Jurassic Park fame.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So Bruce Dern. He's amazing in this movie, but I'm also going to name him the loser of the movie because I feel like this should have been something that catapulted him. But Tom Hanks is the one that gets remembered, even though this isn't really a Tom Hanks movie.
So if I'm remembering correctly, he has said that this is one of his least favorites.
Tom Hanks?
Yes.
Yeah, it makes me sad every time he says it.
And I'm like, I'm with you.
Now,
I'm with you, Thomas, that this is one of my least favorite of your works.
So, like I said, there's a lot of things going on in this movie that would have made it a not great working experience. And I wonder if that has something to do with it. The writer strike's going on. It makes the filming of this movie difficult. They're having to ad lib a lot and just kind of go with things. Also, it's filmed on the Warner Brothers or Universal backlot, Universal Studios, which is also a part of Universal Theme Park. So there's like this, if you look this up, this is a real thing that was happening. There was like a tour guide bus that would roll through like once an hour on the hour, and it was shut down filming for like 10 minutes. And so that must have been frustrating. It must have been a frustrating work experience because this neighborhood where they're filming is like a lot of movies got filmed here. And I can't remember any specifically off the top of my head right now. I do know one of the houses was the Leave It to Beaver house.
Oh.
One of the houses is from a horror movie that I cannot remember right now.
Amityville.
But there are a lot. I mean, this is a well-used backlot on Universal Studios.
Okay. Yeah. So I would agree with Thomas that, like, honestly, if I need a comedy, I'm probably going Money Pit, or I'll even rewatch Bosom Buddies, the whole series.
Yeah, this one probably just misses you as far as time. When I watch this movie, it's just a huge chunk of nostalgia for me. It feels like the 80s, even though it comes out in 1989 at the tail end. I love Joe Dante's sensibilities as far as what he captures here. Like, it seems like he alternately has something serious to say about people in the suburbs, but also that it's funny. And that leads me to the final question.
Oh, hey, I didn't list my loser.
Oh, okay. Who's the loser?
I was just agreeing with Tom Hanks that this is not your best work.
Okay.
Tommy.
Who's your loser?
It's Corey Feldman.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my goodness.
You to pick on Corey Feldman. Hasn't he been through enough?
Probably, but I'll keep adding. So if you look at his filmography, like if you remove Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this is it. It peaks.
Yeah.
It's downhill from here, buddy. And I think it's because you see how limited he is.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I'm not sure it's fair because I'm probably pretty sure he's coached to be the cool kid because that's what he was. Like, it's hard to put into, for people that didn't live through this, it's hard to put into terms of just how popular he was, how cool he was. Corey Feldman was cool. And he essentially plays Corey Feldman in this movie.
Yes.
And that's what people wanted from him. But you're right.
Not.
You're right. This is like the last time. I can't remember when License to Drive comes out with him and Corey Haim. So it came out the year before this. You're right. This is probably the final time where Corey Feldman is, quote, Corey Feldman.
A Little Dream came out in 89.
Everyone hated that.
And so, yeah, it's downhill. But yeah, no, I didn't like him in the Goonies. He was always my least favorite Goonie.
Oh, come on.
Least favorite
You can
Goonie.
at least watch the Goonies and say, boy, but he's talented.
I can say that
He's a kid.
I know people within my friend group that were Corey Feldman of the Goonies. Yes, I can say that growing up. So he captures something, but he also, I feel, just has this narrow niche, or Hollywood put him in it.
Yeah.
And so he becomes an L7 weenie in this.
I actually kind of dig him in this.
I figured you did. Yeah. Like when he's saying, I called pizza, we don't have to leave.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get that he's in a box. If you come at it from now, you look at this and you go, like, I don't get it. But if you grew up in the 80s and Corey Feldman was just cool, and so he's being cool Corey Feldman. And like in a lot of ways, the movie is kind of, the coolness of the movie is structured around his character. Like he's supposed to be the driver of that. Yeah, but I get it. I understand.
So I don't get the Corey love, Feldman or Haim, but Corey Hart, I'm all about.
Chicks dug the Coreys, man. All of them. Corey Hart, too. They dug all the Coreys.
And then
Teen Beat, man. Yeah. There's tons of those magazines, man. All the teenage girls were in love with the Coreys.
Don't get it.
Yeah. Well, in retrospect, it looks weird.
I will say I think Corey might have peaked at the Fox and the Hound. That's it with the slander.
All right. Final question. And this can be as simple as a yes or no answer, or you can get into it a little bit if you want. It's up to you. Does Hollywood understand Middle America?
So no.
Yeah.
Just because there's two tropes for Middle America, that you are either living in the suburbs or you're a farmer. And there's a lot in between. Mm-hmm. And there's some unique quirks that I don't think Hollywood often captures. Like Ted Lasso did a really good job of capturing some of the things that I think Hollywood skips over or misses. But Jason Sudeikis actually is from the Midwest, and so it made sense that he would know how to act like a Midwesterner. So
yeah, I think what Ted Lasso gets, and obviously Jason Sudeikis gets because he's from Kansas, is what Hollywood doesn't get. Hollywood, when they show movies like this, especially back in the day, when you had the Midwesterners on screen, you're right. They were either like farmers or they were suburbanites. But one thing was true of all of them. They were all dumb yokels.
Yep.
And I think what Hollywood gets wrong, and one of the tropey things of this movie, is they're all goobers. Every single one of them are goobers. Even Tom Hanks, who seems to be the most put together, is a goober.
Very much so.
And like, listen, just because we live different lives in different worlds than people on the coasts and the big cities, it doesn't mean we're less intelligent. And we don't have thoughtfulness about the world. And it might be different than yours, but they're smart people here. Really smart people.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the Hollywood. And in a way, I can appreciate things like this when I look at Hollywood's take on suburbia, because there's a lot of things that they get right.
Yes.
About humans. It looks different to when you're not in it. So yeah, you get it right. You've successfully narrowed down some of our brokenness, but what you're not paying attention to, Mr. New York or Mr. Hollywood, is what's your brokenness look like? And you know, turn the camera into the mirror. That's all.
And they did it in Jungle to Jungle. Random Tim Allen movie.
All right. How many hair pieces out of 10 are you giving this?
5.5 to 6.
We're not friends anymore.
Because I see what they're doing. I don't know. I kind of agree with the film review that I don't know if they landed well on any of them particularly. Yeah. But I see that they're trying to do these things, and like it's all there. And with maybe the writer's strike happening earlier or later, it might have worked out a lot better.
Yeah.
But it just didn't quite land.
This movie would have been a high score for me in my youth because I just loved it. But on rewatching and studying and reading about it, like how the production and how that all went, now I think I'd give the movie itself like a 6, somewhere around where you've put it. But I think the actor work in this movie, like the individual work, is higher. Like I respect Bruce Dern, Tom Hanks, Rick Dukeman, even Corey Feldman, and Carrie Fisher, who we don't get to talk about a lot because she gets to be plain Jane, and she's amazing.
And she really isn't on screen that much. Like the most you see her is when they go over to the neighbor's house.
She is a treasure, and like you don't get to see it in this movie unless you're looking for it about how amazing she is. She plays plain Jane housewife amazing in this movie.
Gone but not forgotten.
Yeah, definitely. So the character work, I'm giving a 9. I just think the actors in this are awesome and amazing. But it hits me in the feels.
Darla the dog nailed it.
She puts the lotion in the basket. Hey, everybody, where do you land on the Burbs? Something tells me if you're older like me, this is a movie that probably has a good chance of hitting you in a nostalgic place. If you're younger like Cody, you're like, I don't get it.
So growing up, my sister was a huge fan of the Burbs and Money Pit.
Okay.
And I liked Money Pit. Burbs, I could walk in and out of. There was other Tom Hanks I would go to, such as Forrest Gump.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Tom Hanks' best was yet to come.
Yeah. So much good stuff.
Tell us what you thought of the movie. What are your favorite bits? If you didn't like it, tell us about that. Tell us what you think about the deeper themes within the movie. Your thoughts on those things. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you don't already subscribe to us on wherever you listen to podcasts, or you don't follow us on social media, please go out, do the 2-minute work of subscribing, giving us a review on whatever podcast platform you're on. And then also you should be following us on Facebook and the community group, the Pop Culture Pastor community group on Facebook, because that way you get a lot more interactivity with us and other listeners. So that's a fun thing to do. And as always, share the podcast with your friends, share our posts, tell your friends why you love Pop Culture Pastor. Helping us grow will help the podcast in ways you possibly can't imagine. We got a lot of things we want to do.
Word.
So help us out. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Pop Culture Pastor.